Okay. Now there's certain scripted matter that I need to go through as part of this, but as a preliminary matter, this is Don Lankowitz, Historical Commission Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me.
Yes.
Rose, you can hear me?
Yes,
Rick,
indeed.
you can hear me? Gloria? That's all she wrote. If you've heard this,
Dylan and Jeff are checking in. So
okay. There's Dylan.
Yes, hi, Don.
Can you hear me? You can.
Yeah.
Can we see you?
My camera is not working. I apologize. I can see all of you, though. You look great.
Okay. This meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not allow public comment by means of the chat function, as will be explained in a moment. For this meeting, the Needham Historical Commission is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all participants are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, except for Dylan, and please take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured on the recording. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. And we may not need to do this because we have such a small group, but we'll see how this plays out. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude the remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. So are we clear enough so far, Rose? For any response, wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. So the first agenda item is the approval of the minutes from the last time we met back in February. So I'll go down the line. If anyone has any comments, questions, or motions, go right ahead. Rose?
I am all set.
Okay. Rick?
No comment.
Gloria?
approved.
And Dylan?
All set?
Okay, so do we need a motion to?
Jeff
approve-
is here.
Yes.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Do you see Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff, we can't see you.
You can't see me.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, he's there.
There he is. Okay, we gotcha.
I've been here. I've heard your introduction and rules and all that.
Okay, so do you have any comments on the minutes?
I do not.
Okay. Does somebody to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Gloria?
No, second?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Gloria, so moved.
Okay, Gloria made the motion, Rose approved or seconded, and the minutes are approved. So the first item that we have under the reports is about the demolition of the Mills House at 1479 Great Plain. I can report that Select Board Member Mo Handel and I have made several attempts to meet with the developer. He simply had no interest in discussing any possible options for the property. As a result, the demolition took place right after the ending of the 6-month demolition delay ended in early May. So the house is down now. So
I watched it go down. Interestingly, I took a picture. They found a old 20-foot well that deep. It was 10 feet before it hit water, and it was 10 feet of water. And took pictures. It was underneath the garage floor. So
Garage was an addition to the house, a later addition to the house.
okay. Any other comments, questions in regard to the demolition of the Mills house? If not, let's go to the second item.
question. I have a comment. I mean,
Go ahead, Jeff.
do we let it go, or we're just so unhappy with the planning board and their their inability to collaborate. Do we let it go, or do we, again, there was an article in the paper that was privately initiated, but for future reference, making a point of, letting that maybe the town people know that we made every effort to save that house. And the planning board ignored and acted, I think, inappropriately.
Are you suggesting any action, Jeff?
I'm raising the question, and yes, I'm persistent and feel like, if we're a historical commission, and we should have some influence, and to be disregarded as such, I think is maybe we ask to have a meeting. Not just one representative, and maybe we have a joint meeting with the historical commission, the planning board, and the selectmen. I wonder if the selectmen certainly aren't happy about the process, if not personally, but if not professionally, jointly. I would like to make a motion that it's worth exploring better collaboration between the historical commission and other boards.
I have a question, Jeff. This is Dylan. Sorry you can't see me, but would the purpose of this meeting be to somehow elevate the authority of this commission in the process? Is that even possible? I'm new here, so I'm just trying to understand, because I was at that meeting at the town hall a few months back when we heard from the developer, and I think, like many of us, I was disappointed in the ultimate kind of hands tied behind your back feeling that we all had in how the process is designed. Is that what you're suggesting? I just don't know what the possible avenues would be if we did have this meeting. What would
I don't believe there's a way to increase our influence or empower, formally, without, our existence is defined by the bylaws, and the changing of bylaws would require, probably, a warrant of a vote at town meeting.
I understand.
But I think a conversation could increase our influence in boards and selectmen, speaking to how other boards should respond when there is a request of collaboration
Right. So you're suggesting a less formal form of increased cooperation, just
Right.
sort of, right. I understand.
Okay. Gloria, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Well, two things. First of all, yes, we can't do anything formal without a change to the bylaws, but we have been talking over the last several years about changing the bylaw and creating neighborhood preservation zones. And, maybe within that change process, we can build in a more consultative role for the board with the other boards, planning and selectmen and zoning particularly. But I agree with Jeff. I think a meeting is probably not a bad idea. As sort of after it dawned on the planning board that, their action was going to cause the house to come down, it was sort of, in some ways, an unintended consequence they didn't see coming. And, at that point, it was too late to backfill. The new owner was not going to go through this process yet again that the former owner had gone through. But if we could have a better process, even if it is an informal process of dealing with these various boards when an issue like this comes up, it may be helpful. Not my phone.
Not mine. Gloria, could you also talk about the spirit, anyway, of the meetings that we had with Mo and the people from the planning board when the Mills House issue was first coming up? I thought we had a very good discussions and seemed to be very positive coming from the planning board as to maybe something they should have done better.
I think, in all honesty, I think they were surprised, and I know actually a couple of them mentioned this to me in other settings, that they were surprised that we specifically and the town more generally saw their reaction to the proposal as negative. And, my thought was, you're saying you will never approve a configuration like this. Where's the positive? Can you blame him for seeing that as a negative take?
Right.
But when I did speak, I had a long conversation with Lee Newman, and she said that actually there was sentiment to preserve the house, and they wanted to find a way to go about it. And when we did meet with representatives of the select board, the planning board, and the building commissioner was also at that meeting.
Right.
There was considerable support for finding a way to find a win-win, something that would allow the builder to get the three houses, the value out of his property while saving the Mills House. And unfortunately, at that point, I think the cart had already, the horse had already abandoned the barn. There was at that point a new owner. He did not want to go through this process again. And, and as you said, made no response to the many attempts to get a hold of him to discuss possible alternatives. So I think if we could get this done sooner in the process rather than trying to catch up later, there is an advantage to that.
Jeff, you have your hand up there?
Yes. I mean, it's nice to think that you were left with an impression that they were sort of positive and they didn't think they were negative. Okay. I could recite some vulgarities of what they're full of because there was not, the only positive thing that came out of the first meeting about preservation in regards to was Jeannie McKnight suggesting that they do a covenant based on the other house that they would commit to, preserving it, not demolishing it, which is an unreasonable imposition to hold over somebody's head who's already said they're committed to saving the house, and that they need to. The reason why I think that we should have this meeting is, they have to understand that words have consequences. And you put across something and respond impulsively with knee-jerk reactions, and that's what came out of their first sort of responses to somebody who was making it. One member even said, "Well, what? They were just trying to make some money. Why do I have to be sensitive? Right? But they could. The current builder is making some money and ignoring any attempt to do something that would preserve it and compromise any profits, whereas the original person was willing to make some of those compromises and do a difficult thing and make less money with an effort to preserve. So they can't just change their attitude midstream and then say, well, we were for saving it. You didn't act that way when you first opened up your mouths in a very public forum. And the miniature will reflect. We can go back and you can look at that, and the minutes can reflect, what was said so negatively and how there was not anything positive, said in that first meeting. Oh, that's why I think we go back and say, you can't step, halfway back through the, through the process and then say, oh, we're sorry, and make revisionist history. They had a letter. They had a letter from written by this commission. They had a representative at that meeting who was articulating, this commission's stance, and they still had nothing positive to say.
Okay, as we move forward, what kind of action can we take? I understand the passion, Jeff, but how should we proceed? What are you suggesting we do?
I'm suggesting that we ask the selectmen to chair a joint session, okay, for an effort to work through boards collaborating more positively together in an effort to do preservation. And because they acted as a planning board without any interest in preservation. And they, right? And I don't want it to pass as just because the next time it comes up, do they get an opportunity to just ignore any contributions that we make? I want them to understand that this is a mistake that they made, and I don't want it to happen again. And I don't think the selectmen want it to happen again.
So any suggestions for either bringing a resolution to this or advancing some type of a meeting as Jeff is suggesting? Anybody have any ideas? Rose?
I think
Rose?
I have to,
Go ahead. Well, you're muted, Rose. You're muted. Can't hear you. Unmute.
gotcha.
Gotcha.
Okay, you would think this is my first rodeo. It isn't. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Anyhow, I think that anytime that you have a meeting with groups that have some history, that we need to go into it knowing what we want to get out of it, knowing that we have specific goals that we want to bring people together. And I think Jeff was talking about it and talking about bringing the group together so that there is Gloria said it also, a win-win for the entire town. This is not just about us and the Mills House, although it's a wonderful example. It is about the whole process. And I know that Gloria and Don, you went off and met with people at one point, did you not?
Yes.
And that was a positive meeting.
Gloria,
That
do you want to?
question, sorry.
It was a
Was
positive meeting.
Was that a positive meeting that you had?
It was a positive meeting. Unfortunately, at that point, it was already too late.
It was already
It
too
was
late.
already too late. And
That from a procedural point of view, what needs to be done is to decide at which point the Historical Commission needs to get involved. We shouldn't be the last ones at the table. We need to be at the beginning, and that should not be a negative from anyone's point of view. I would think everyone would like to have as many people involved in the decision as possible. Said Pollyanna. I know the reality. I know the political reality, but the political reality is that you do want to appear to be inclusive and involving all of the people who need to be involved. So we just need to make sure that we need to find a way to be involved at the correct time rather than later in the event. Okay, I'll stop now.
Can anyone hear me? Laura,
Oh, go
it's
ahead.
Laura.
Didn't know you were here.
I'm sorry, I'm late. Can you see me or no?
Yes, you can.
yes,
Okay, my apologies. I won't tell you why, but anyways, sorry for being late. Where it's kind of, it seems like it might be a little bit of, I don't know, an emotional or maybe difficult kind of meeting maybe. Would it make sense for just maybe Dawn and maybe the person in charge of the planning board to just have a little bit of a conversation about what happened with this and how it can be better next time, as opposed to like group to group, which I think could be, I don't know, perceived as like a little bit of a us versus them. I don't know. I don't know the
Well,
protocol either. So
That's why I was sort of asking the selectmen to coordinate. Could I make a motion or volunteer to draft a letter for us to write to the selectmen as a suggestion that they chair a joint session?
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Gloria.
I think actually Rose has a point, and it may be better as a chair vice chair's meeting. Right, because what if you have the whole boards, it becomes a public meeting.
Mm.
And then it
Right,
has,
I would prefer it to become a public meeting. I think, Gloria, there have been times where you've had history with meeting the people and then felt ignored, and we spent time meeting, venting about how we feel like the orphan child as a committee, and I'm not tolerant of feeling disregarded professionally, and
you
I
realize
think by
we-
individuals it becomes easier to sort of ignore. Oh yes, thank you, Gloria. We work with you. Well, we won't do it again. And then we go down and go, oh, we just read the minutes of the selectmen, and they just approved and they didn't even consult us.
they actually have no obligation to consult us. We're treading a fine line. Our only statutory authority is demolition, and whether or not to find preferably preserved or not. A lot of this consultation that we've kind of fostered really doesn't have to happen.
Right. So therefore they can't, right. So if we went individual to individual, it makes it easier for them to ignore us. Whereas we do a public process in an effort to suggest that there's a way to collaborate professionally, and then when they make a public statement that they will make every effort to collaborate with the Historical Commission when the commission offers an opinion, then it's a matter of public record.
Okay, any other
Yeah.
discussion?
They could still ignore us.
Yes, they could,
Yeah.
because it's not in the bylaws. But if,
And to
but,
set up,
but
I'm not sure it's an advantage to set it up as an adversarial situation.
it is an adversarial situation right now. It's, they ignored us. They destroyed a historic house that they had a possibility of saving, and so it is adversarial. And this is an effort to make it so it's not adversarial in the future, and make some amends. I think we don't have any amends to make. I think they do, and I would like them to ask it. And if they don't, like I said, I think the selectmen are friendly to our cause in this regard.
I think they are, but in my opinion, 3 full boards is adversarial.
Yeah.
I would start smaller and then maybe later bring our joint conclusions to all 3 boards to get it on the public record that way.
I disagree. The time that I have been on this board, there have been many. Tell me if I'm wrong, but there have been many hours where we've talked and vented about how angry we have been when the selectmen have disregard, even in things that we had control over, complaining about how they made decisions around the town common when that is something that's documented that we oversee. And there were people, when I was new to the committee, people were venting about how the selectmen ignored our input when it was documented that we had input or control. This is not something that just came up in its isolated incident, and it's being adversarial. The adversity has been part of this conversation since I've been a member of this board. Does anyone disagree with that?
Yes.
Yes?
Go ahead, Rose.
I wonder whether we have, what we want to get out of this is the conclusion that we want to have the Needham Historical Commission consulted when appropriate in a timely fashion, to have a public meeting in which we tell others what they've done wrong, and everybody, it does not lead to a conclusion that will be to our benefit, I don't think.
Well, I didn't frame it that way. I framed it as an effort for a future, without looking in the past, the future as a way to work together. We don't have to talk about how we felt like we didn't work together. That's implied. But now let's look to the future. That was my putting a positive bent on the effort to meet and collaborate. The selectmen could turn it down. I mean, we make a request and they could say, we don't see the point either.
So again, what steps are you actually suggesting here, Jeff? I mean, what could be an initial first step, either Jeff or anyone, if we want to pursue this, whether it leads toward a small meeting or a large meeting? What is the next step that can be taken?
I would suggesting writing a letter to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, as an effort to have a joint session. They often have joint sessions between the Selectmen and the Planning Board.
Yeah. On that point, Jeff, I'm not sure I can agree with you. I don't think having these large groups together is going to end up in a positive place. Perhaps meeting smaller to get at least the point across that we need to be included, rather than making a big show of it, which it seems like that can happen easily. Jeff or Rick?
What I would suggest is that when we were doing the third inventory, one of the work products was a proposed community preservation policy or statement. If we were to revive that and send that to the selectmen and the different boards and recommend that this may be something that the town would want to adopt, that all boards and commissions that have anything to do or would touch upon, it could be the building department or whatever, is that there's a general statement that we are all in favor of preferably preserving the history in its, in its physical aspects of the town. And then that would be a means of getting the chairs of each of the groups together and maybe using the Mills House as an example of why not having a coordinated policy and something that we want to, pursue would be a way to approach this.
I think that's a good idea, Rick.
I have a copy of that plan and can circulate it, the draft plan. I'll send it to Rose to send around.
That would be terrific. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so at this point, can we table this discussion until we can see what that report looks like?
Can we put it on the agenda for the next meeting after we get a chance to read that from
That'd be
Gloria?
good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there any other further discussion, questions, or motions? Gosh, everybody's telephone's ringing. On the Mills House. If not, we can move on to our the report on the Emery Grover plans.
Okay. I think we actually are in a pretty good place. It's kind of nice to report that.
Yeah.
As you remember, in our last episode, there were 6 options. Basically tearing down the Emery Grover, building an addition to the Emery Grover, building a new building that had the old facade. 2 options on Greens Field, one either in the spot where Stephen Palmer is, or the other at the other end, and then basically flipping the building and the park. And the 6th was using Hillside. In the interim, as the school board, the various other boards weighed in, Park and Rec was not going to allow any of the Greensfield options. School department did not want the Hillside option because it made them too remote. Plus, the town has needs for that space for years going forward as various other public facilities are reconstructed. So the architect came back with 3 additional options, or three final options. These are the ones that will be under consideration. The first is what was always option 1, tear down and build again. The second is what was, I think at the time, option 4 or something, build an addition to the back of the Emery Grover. One way that was made a little more palatable is it's a bigger addition. The original addition was too small to meet the program needs, but they were persuaded that there's no reason it needs to be too small. So you're building it, you might as well build it big enough. So option 2 is to build an addition to the back of Emery Grover, similar to the way Town Hall was expanded, where the building was kept and then it was, added to with a facade that looks compatible with the building. And the third is to build an addition, but build it perpendicular, rather than to the back. Build it perpendicular, sort of along the St. Joe's border, for various, layout and square footage reasons, but it wasn't a big, huge change. So those are the 3 they're going forward with. Yeah.
You muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. From what I understand really quickly, also with that L-shaped addition, there would be underground parking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, just wanted to jump.
That's a possible consideration anyway, because there is not enough parking on
Right.
on that spot, almost whatever they do. So the report I sent you is the consultant's final report. So as a result, it includes all of the stuff we went through the first part of the process, most of which has now been set aside, but it's got like all the plans, all the costs, all the, the whole bit. So as I said, you could skip over 100-page 117, which are the three new options, and the chapter following that are the cost breakouts. But the bottom line is I think the spread is something like 18.8 million to 19.2 million. It's actually a fairly trivial spread between the three options. The only significant difference being option 2, keeping the building and adding, or actually options 2 and 3, keeping the building and adding an addition, may make it eligible in some part for CPC funding, which would mitigate some of the funding that the funding that the town has to put directly in. But it looks, and there's no significant cost savings to tearing the building down and starting again. There's no particular space advantages to doing that. So I think we're in a pretty good place. I'm hoping we're in a pretty good place, that the building will be kept, will be added to, and we'll get certainly the exterior appearance and preservation that we would like to see on that site, plus some landscaping that'll make the site look a little bit better. There will be major changes to the inside, but the inside is not only already compromised, but so fragile that there are not a lot of features to try and hold on to.
Laura?
Yes, and I can add that was discussed at the CPC meeting on May 13th, and the CPC, I guess, is can fund anything. Sorry, let me go back to these notes. They've listed the project funding as $11 million from their end of things. And those funds are those that are related to this historic preservation piece of the building, whatever comes under, the categories that CPC is allowed to fund. And then there were a lot of questions at the meeting about, well, if we, what's exactly included in that. And we're supposed to get more feedback on exactly what those costs are, but that was the number that was talked about at the last meeting from CPC.
So 11 out of the 19 is potentially fundable? Was that?
So we didn't get a 19, again, you probably know more than I, but there was the project total that, I don't know that we ever got let me just see something here. Give me 1 second, and I'll find that. Sorry. I don't think we ever got the total project figure in that way. Okay, so I take that back. We got the 3 options that you talked about, and the range was tight, but it was higher. It was between 27 and 28 million. And the most expensive one was the L-shaped addition with the parking under it. And that was like not only, I mean, these are funny numbers at this point, but 750,000 more for parking.
Pennies.
So those were the numbers we were looking at. This was as of May 7th. And I'm sure you saw all this. They gave us like a plan of what it all looked like. And the consensus was at that point, the superintendent of schools was at the meeting, and he just basically said, we want to do what the town feels is best. He was there, so the committee members could ask specifics about, what was going to be considered historic, what did they consider that to be. Like, for example, to keep the facade the way it is, which is historic. There's also, things like egress entries, elevators, restrooms, that kind of goes part and parcel with the whole project. So to figure out exactly, you know, what that number is from CPC, the estimate was maybe 50 to 60%. But then, so I think it's still up in question as to what exactly the CPC would cover. But obviously, you know, it seems like anything that's considered to preserve the building would be could be allocated to CPC money.
Certainly the addition would not qualify,
Right.
but work done,
But anything touching that facade that
the old building.
results in keeping that facade the way it is. And the question is, where is that line drawn? And that's really not something I don't think we know yet. So there's just going to be there were a bunch of questions asked of the superintendent, and also I can't pronounce his name, Dr. Good.
Good against.
Dr.
Thank
G.
you. Okay. There's, you know, Henry Haff, the project manager. So there's a lot of questions that CPC went back to them with, and they're going to follow back up in another meeting. So in general, I think we're on the same page. I think they like preserving the site. They want to stay there. I think that parking underground is appealing because of the parking problem. And we're just trying to hone in on what we can on the CPC, you know, within the rights of what we're allowed to do, give to that project.
I mean, there's still a lot of design to go. There's no,
Right.
you know, there's no
I think-
design for the addition. There's no design for the internal layout of the old
Right.
building. And you know, a lot of those costs and decisions will be dependent on that.
And I think it's a placeholder for 2025, if I'm not, does that make sense?
25,
Yeah.
26, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
but I
just-
think they, you know, at this point, they need to know what the target is in order
Of
to
course,
refining, yeah.
right.
I want to get McGinley Caslow to do the project.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Is that the same people that did town hall?
It did town hall.
Wendell, we need Wendell.
Anything else, Gloria?
No, I think that covers it for now. It'll be a little while before there's any further movement. And I think actually the planning committee is going to be disbanded. So it's going to go pretty much entirely into the town process going forward.
Okay, so that your committee is good.
It hasn't yet been, but I think that's what it sounded like from his last note, that, you know, we've sort of reached the end of our task.
Okay. Any questions for Gloria? If not, nothing further. Laura, what about the CPC in addition to what you've already mentioned?
Well, thank you so much again for the opportunity to serve on that committee. I want to just keep saying that. It's a gift that keeps on giving. We've had a lot of meetings since I've seen you guys. No, actually, it's a good committee. It's really interesting. I'm joking. So there's just there's not much happened, you know, from March until now, obviously. The projects requests are the First Baptist Church, the front porch, the First Parish Church steeple, Needham Community Farm, growing bed expansion, the Needham Conservation Trail Identification Project, and then resurfacing the track at DeFazio Field, along with the Emery Grover. And not so much has gone on. The only thing that was kind of brought up was whether, with regard to the churches, whether they were able to receive PPP money. And indeed they were, and I believe that one of the churches did. I can't remember which one. I'm sorry about that. But then we haven't heard a lot from them since our last meeting. So we don't have a lot to report on those projects. I think the one that's the most confusing for us right now is the steeple preservation, because the way it was presented, it sort of just looked like a structural repair to keep something that was already there looking the same. Like could be done with paint and whatnot, and was it really eligible for CPC funds? So we're working through that. And then, you know, the bigger one is the First Baptist Church, the porch renovation. The porch was preservation, preservation and restoration. And so that's a bigger project, and we're wanting to see like where their financial standing is given what's happened, just to make sure that they still have the funds that they need on their end to complete the project, because there's no point in us giving them X amount of dollars if they can't come up with their piece of it. That could change the request, you know, could change things like that. So that's why kind of still working on those two. All of this is being put off till the fall. You probably already know that. It would have been voted on, I think. It would have been a town meeting and a vote in the spring, but that didn't happen. So I think we still have to keep meeting over the summer on this stuff. My project was the resurfacing of the track at DeFazio. I'm very proud. I have a mentor on my project, and I'm working with Chris Gerstel, who's kind of entertaining. I don't know if you know him. And that's kind of funny. It's to replace the skin. I never knew this was a thing. Okay. It's like a whole thing. There's a company that does it. I mean, whoever, they would come and they'd rip off the whole skin and they'd redo the whole thing. And it's, you know, it's a lot of money. And track, I think, is 15 years old. And we asked about warranties and all this, and there's no warranty. It basically, like, you know, it's just something you sort of have to do. We don't have updated information on that. I mean, everything just sort of, as you know, just kind of sort of stopped, but yeah. So thank you again. And I will have more next time. No, I really,
as long as you're enjoying it, Laura.
no, the best part was that meeting when you all gently brought it up, and all of a sudden, like, I turned around and everyone was like looking at me like with a smile, and I'm like, oh, I think they want me to volunteer for this. Dylan, too bad you weren't there then. But no, it's been,
don't warn him.
No, it's been good. Honestly, I'm happy. I really am happy, because I don't know anything about town government, really. It's just more of a learning curve for me, and I think hopefully it's helpful to this commission. It's a much different experience because they have, you know, the secretary, and they have town support, and I don't know if that's probably because they're dealing with money. Yeah. Probably it's more of a formal kind of a thing. But anyway, that's what I have for now.
Okay. And any other questions for Laura? Comments? If not, we can move on to new business. The first part, actually, this is a two-part discussion. The first part has to do with a policy that we were discussing the last time that we met. In regard to submitting a letter or writing a letter to the new owners of historic homes or homes that are on the inventory, in a sense to introduce the commission, to provide some information about their house, and try to build sort of a community of homeowners that own properties that are on the inventory. So we left off, we had a motion on the table that Jeff had initiated, was seconded by Rick, and it reads, when the Needham Historical Commission becomes aware of a change in ownership of a house on the inventory, the Historical Commission will send a letter of introduction to the new owner with information about the house and the commission's purpose. So the first step really is to agree or initially discuss and hopefully agree that this is will be a policy of the Historical Commission. Second part was is a discussion on a draft of a letter that Rose and I had put together for our discussion. So since I might need some advice here. Since the motion was already made in the last meeting, Does it need to be remade again, or can we just discuss and then take a vote?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The letter.
Any discussion on that amendment or the motion, Jeff's motion? No discussion. So let's go ahead, Gloria.
How do we, I know we occasionally find out that a house has changed hands, especially when a homeowner, comes to us saying, I never knew this was the case. Do we have a way of sort of finding out when these houses change hands? We can recruit the realtors, but that'll be, inconsistent.
Yeah, Laura?
Yes, so what we can do, I mean, there's a couple ways you can do it. The registries of deeds are all publicly accessed. So there's a couple ways. We can go to the Norfolk Registry of Deeds. You can put in Needham. We can do a search of all deed transfers in a given period of time. It's public record, and then we can take that information and we can use that. So I don't know if we want to do it monthly, quarterly, however, whatever frequency. The only way that may not work is if the person doesn't occupy the property. In other words, we may get a different address if they're buying it as an investment, but then we wouldn't really care because they would be interested in probably preserving it if they weren't living in it. So that's public record, and I'm happy to do that. My son can do it. He's an attorney. It's any of us. It's not hard to do. So we don't have to rely on anybody for that information.
Yeah, I did contact the Register of Deeds in Norfolk County to see if their system would accommodate some way of tagging.
Right, telling us.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't
Don,
exist, nor do they want it to exist.
Can I just tell you something about these registries? First of all, Suffolk completely closed for a period of time because of their inability to do things electronically. These are so far back. Like they're worse than this town's birth records and marriage records. It's really antiquated. They are so far behind. Norfolk does have online. They're a little bit ahead of the curve, but yeah, no, they're not gonna. I would be shocked if they did that. The other thing is I have access through my office, and I'm sure we can figure out a way to do it if we wanted to, but we don't really have to a report of sales, purchases in any given area have you ever heard of the trade magazine, Banker and Tradesman? So
Right.
they do the listings in the back. You can see all the transactions and whatnot, but you can also pay them to give you a report. And so you could do it that way. But again, I don't know that you're going to know whether it's an owner occupied household or not.
Mhm.
So you just send the letter and whoever gets it, gets it. But we can totally do it. It's not hard at all.
Rick?
Yeah, I think that'd be, Laura, I think that's a great idea. And I think also, not only do we have the list of properties on the inventory, but also we have our list of properties we'd love to have on the inventory and have that on the search criteria as well. And we may have a slightly altered letter to them saying, hey, you own a historical house.
Did you know? Yeah.
Did you know? And, this is something you may we'd love to talk to you about
Right.
Getting it on the inventory to get it up early when they're, when they're enthralled with their new house and provide them with more information.
I'm not sure if it's easier to get a list of all of the transactions or to just put in, I guess we don't want to keep re-inputting the same properties every quarter or month, whatever, to see, oh, did they pop up? It's probably better to get a list and just look at the list, right?
Yeah. Laura, do you know how is that list organized? Is it by?
I don't know. I'd have to go in and I can visualize it when I do my search. But when I think about it, I've only actually tried to do a search of one particular property. So I can look into that and see. The other thing is, what about the assessor's office? They must know who takes ownership so they can send them a tax bill. And now I know sometimes there's a lag, but when a property transfers, the assessor's office that might be better. I don't know. The assessor's office has to issue the tax bill to the new borrower. So they should have that knowledge. It might be lagging a couple of months, but they should have it. Do we know anybody there?
Look at my contras. Because I think what, you know, if you could do a search just of Needham property transactions in a given month, that
Yep.
number isn't that lengthy. And,
No.
and you say, you know, you look through it and say, you scan it and say, are these any of these listings, you know,
Mhm.
anything that's on our list to
So
cross?
there's two. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can do that on the registry, but I have to believe our own tax assessor's office, they have to know that, or how do they know who to send the bill to? Right?
Right.
They must have a list of transfers. I think we should ask them first, only because it might be something that's already in existence and provided to somebody already. And if not, I can do this. I can check out the search when I go to work tomorrow and see how that works about getting a whole list.
Okay. And I can contact the assessor's office just to see the potential there, if there's any at all. So as far as the motion is concerned, we had a second.
I'll second.
We already had a second.
Oh,
Oh,
Rick seconded it last time. I didn't know if we needed to reintroduce the motion in this meeting, or we can just carry it.
I think conceptually we've agreed that we would send out a letter. Now it's just a question of the wording of the letter, which we have a copy of a draft that we would then have to approve or amend.
Okay. Rose?
Oh,
Rose,
muted.
you're muted. You're muted, Rose. Rose? Can't hear
Actually,
you.
I know.
Oh,
I know. Anyhow, so we do not need to, we're just bringing this motion back into the conversation, but we haven't yet had a vote on the motion. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So we need to have that vote, or I discuss the letter first, whatever you wish to do.
Okay, well, let me just go through the list and as a roll call vote. Jeff? Can't hear you, Jeff.
yes.
Okay. Rick?
Aye.
Dylan?
Yes.
Laura? Laura?
Oh, gee, there.
yes, and it might be too late. Is there any way to just emphasize the historical significance sentence or wording?
Oh, we'll work, I think we'll work on that next.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's just the motion
Okay.
to establish the policy.
Okay, I vote yes.
And Rose?
Yes.
And Gloria?
Yes.
And yes for me. Okay, next let's take a look at the letter. So Laura, you had a comment on the letter?
I was just wondering, in the first paragraph, I love the letter, but should we sort of, do we want to put the piece about you purchased an historical home closer to the front, or underline it or something like that, or not?
Do you have a specific suggestion for the edit?
If we say that on your purchase of, and there put something like your new home, which has been recognized for its historical significance, or is that too long of a sentence?
And it sort of repeats something that's in the second sentence. Or the second, yeah. Go ahead, Rose. Rose?
Yeah, I have to, oh, I'm not muted. Oh, most of the time it
Go
goes,
back talking to yourself. Yeah.
default is mute here. Okay, I agree with Laura that it would be nice to get the, mention the owner first. But I really do think that congratulating, it's going to say, dear Rose and Kevin Doherty, Needham Historical Commission congratulates you on the purchase of your new home at, yeah, I worked on this, so I have no ego involved in it. But if you can find a way to get the you stuff, with the, you have purchased an important part of Needham's past.
Right,
And the
exactly. Put
historic-
that first.
Yes. You have purchased an important part of Needham's past, and the Needham Historical Commission congratulates you on the purchase of your new home at.
Yes. I think
What
just
about
reversing them.
just reversing those two sentences the way they are.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
the owner, ...
Yeah.
historic homes, Needham Historical Commission congratulates you.
Yes.
That sound better?
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
And we don't have to say on the purchase of your new home at address, because it has said Rose and Kevin Doherty, 134 Melrose Avenue.
And they're going to be getting it as a letter. So.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. How about
So
that?
I would support that. But I have to excuse myself because I have another meeting I have to attend. But I will vote for supporting the letter with those edits. And
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff.
Jeff, your
Bye.
yard looks great.
oh, thank you. Which yard?
Your house yard. All
Okay.
those flowers along Great Plain. Really nice.
Thank you.
Bye, Jeff.
Well, good night.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night,
Good
Jeff.
night.
Figure out how to do this.
You're going to
Just
leave.
hit leave.
I got it.
Don't poke us with that. Okay. Any other comments, additions, deletions?
Just to make it a little easier on them, we
Mhm.
might want to actually put the link to their Macros profile and their Digital Commonwealth photo. When we
Oh,
well,
okay.
personalize the letter, system known as Macros, link in parentheses, 1940 photograph, because I know certainly Digital Commonwealth can be hard to navigate
Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
actually, and Macros is not exactly
Yeah, you
intuitive.
have to get it exactly right in terms of address.
You
or
want
how
to
to
add
shoot.
something, end up wiping out your list. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
actually,
so just to put the link right there, and they can. I'd be reluctant to actually copy the report and send it along, just because I think in a lot of ways it helps for them to see all the other resources.
Yeah.
Once they're on Macros and they'll see that there are a whole bunch of other ones, or see all the photographs, it's kind of reinforcing. But to make it a little easier for them to find, I think would be helpful.
Okay. Good idea.
and that
Rick?
that should be easy to do because I created a spreadsheet that had
Yeah.
the Macros links for each house in the inventory. So
Oh,
it'd be very easy just to copy and paste that.
Go
Yeah.
you.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think just, help them a little.
yeah.
They can
I
improve
guess
it as
that does raise the question. If we're putting a link in here, we'll want to send this a print letter, maybe, but initially perhaps an email so that they can activate the links. Rose?
Well, I think that you really want to send the hard copy, just because you don't know you don't know people's email addresses. Even if you
Right.
find out that someone
Okay.
has purchased 25 Grant Street or whatever, you're not going to know what the email is or the email that they use.
Yeah.
People have multiple email accounts.
They
Right.
can, they can type it. They can type it in easily enough. They're not that complicated.
Okay, so the link would be the URL.
Yeah,
Okay.
for their Macros, for their PDF, basically.
Okay.
And, okay, and that is going to go in what paragraph of the letter?
The more information about your home can be found in Massachusetts Cultural Information System known as Macros at link.
Okay,
Next sentence, the 1950s era photograph is also available Digital Commonwealth website at link.
right, and that, okay, gotcha, beautiful.
I personally
that
would
makes-
start that next sentence with "and a 1950s era photograph," but I know not everybody likes that.
No.
It's advertising speak.
It is.
I'm getting to be more and more forced into rather than proper English.
Anything else? Any other comments?
No.
Sounds really
Oh.
nice. Good letter.
Did you just
You
lose
guys,
power?
yeah, can you see me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
In the dim light of your screen, you lost power?
Yeah.
Oh
Uh-oh.
my gosh.
Wow, should be yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
That's awful.
But yeah, my husband says maybe they're doing it on purpose to stop the meeting. Somewhat.
Which part of town are you in, Laura?
We're on Jarvis Circle by Volante.
No,
You know
you're
where
not.
that is?
You're not far from us.
Wow.
We're in the place that gets flooded every time it rains,
Oh,
basically.
Yeah.
But but why do we have internet? I'm confused. Or am I on my own internet? No, I'm on. Okay, yeah. So I can still do this apparently with my own Wi-Fi.
Right.
Sorry.
That's okay. We can still see you. Any other comments, changes? If not, is there a motion to accept the letter with the additions or changes?
Rick Hardy, I move that we accept the letter with the as amended.
Second?
Gloria seconds. Let me just go through the list real quick. Jeff's already said yes. Rick,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Laura,
Hi.
Rose,
Yes.
Gloria,
Aye.
and I as well. Okay. The next bit of new business has to do with our succession plan, as we've outlined it on the agenda. So Gloria will be taking over as the chair of this commission beginning in September. Rose will move up to vice chair, and Jeff will be the secretary. And gosh, I don't come up until 2026, so a little bit of a respite there. So, do we have any discussion about the process? We thought we'd go on a calendar year process rather than the calendar year, school year rather than calendar year. Laura, I can still see your hand.
Oh, good. Are we missing a member still? Are we down one person or not?
No, we're full.
No?
It's
Oh,
7.
okay. Okay, thank you.
So we're good.
And just this schedule, since we're not tied to the election schedule, most boards turn over in April because of the elections. They change personnel. We're not tied to that schedule anyway. So running what is essentially our program year, September to June, I think makes a lot more sense for us. It gives us one consistent year without having to change over in the middle.
That's good.
Any other discussion? Have a motion to accept the new procedure.
So moved.
Gloria, second.
Second.
Oh,
Second. There I am in the dark.
see your earbuds there.
I know. And my teeth look pretty good, I think.
Okay, just go down the list again. Jeff, absent. Rick,
Aye.
Dylan,
Aye.
Dylan.
Aye.
Okay, gotcha. Laura,
Bye.
Rose,
Aye.
Gloria,
Aye.
and I as well.
Gosh, we're so agreeable today.
Yeah. So there's no other new business. Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring up?
I just want to comment on the calendar. Did we send that out to everybody?
Yes, we did.
Okay, were there any, did anybody notice? We tried to coordinate with the town, coordinate with the schools, coordinate with the holidays. I think, any meeting that moved off of the third Monday was because of a holiday.
Right.
We actually have town hall reserved for September to June. But realistically, it's not going to happen in September. But I think we're ready to go for the year.
Yeah. And I think they said we can always cancel that. Plus, current situation seems like we'll be meeting this way at least through the end of the year.
Ad infinitum.
Anyway, so.
Rose?
Ad infinitum will be
Yeah.
meeting this
Yeah.
way.
Laura?
My son just told me that the town should have a list of every property transfer. So I don't know if he said he thinks it's through the assessor's office.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can find out from there.
Okay. And I'll look as well, through I'll just check online and see what it looks like.
Okay, great. If there's nothing else, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Gloria? Second?
Second?
Laura? Okay. Rick? Aye.
Aye.
Dylan?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Rose?
Aye.
Gloria?
Aye.
And I as well. So the meeting adjourned. And there's Sandy back again.
And hopefully
Why
Sandy-
am I in the dark and nobody else is?
Sandy-
Where do we
Sandy
I
is
live in
looking
Natick.
for home.
I live in Natick. Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Sandy.
you
Thank
so
you all.
much.
Good seeing your faces again.
Okay, stay well.
Bye.
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 Bye.